Wonderful. Welcome, everyone, to our final first Friday of the 22-23 academic year. I am Kelly Young. I'm a professor in biological sciences at Cal State Long Beach, and I am beyond thrilled to have as our May 2023 speaker, Dr. Jules Balen. And we're inviting Dr. Balen to share his take on that key transition between being a postdoc or a grad student and then becoming a tenure track CSU professor. This is a wonderful kind of a graduation topic to talk about as we enter our final month. And I am going to invite Dr. Balen to share the story, background, history, a little bit. We always talk about that first, right? And then before we launch into the topic, but please extend a very warm welcome to Dr. Balen.
Thank you all for having me. It's really an honor to get to be here. I was asked to put together a slide that somehow encapsulated my career. If I'd done the career thing, I probably would have been a bunch of potholes, but sinkholes in some cases. But I made it. And the thing is, it's graduation time, so I wanted to sort of celebrate that energy right now. And I put this together too to sort of keep a focus for me, just to give you quickies on the pictures. That one in the upper left-hand corner is my PhD graduation, and that's my mother, who's since passed. I'm just below that in 2012, I think, with Marta Cortera, who came to our Si Se Pudo graduation and ceremony on our campus. And then you see me in a background that actually has a ton of people in it down in the lower right, with a lot of my colleagues and students here in our sort of group, Africana Studies, Chicana Studies, etc., graduation celebration, probably about 6 years ago, I don't know. In the center, you'll see my book, A Queerly Joyful Noise, Choral Musicking for Social Justice. And so I wanted to give a little bit about my research and the kind of research I do. Probably the thing that ties it together is an article I published in a collection called Women's Studies for the Future, called Practicing What We Teach, because that's kind of at the core of the kind of work I do. In the upper right-hand corner, you see what was a postcard, basically. In fact, I think I have some here. I've been invited to edit a journal or a special edition of the Journal of Lesbian Studies at the 50th anniversary of Monique Wittig's publication of Le Cœur Lesbien, or The Lesbian Body, at 50. So I'm very excited about that, because that's Monique Wittig was not just like one of the big writers, thinkers of the 20th century, but was also a dear friend. So it's an honor to get to, I worked with her at the University of Arizona for 12 years or something, I think, something like that. In any case, so I did my career backwards. So mine's not typical. And part of the reason I think I'm in faculty development, I am our faculty development director here. How many of you know what a faculty development director is? Anybody? I see Esmeralda sort of going, maybe. What's your imagination? Put it in the chat or speak up.
I think just helping faculty in like their role in the different like service, teaching, and research responsibilities.
Excellent. So we talk about student success. The faculty development role is for faculty success, because student success depends on faculty success. So I'm helping students by helping faculty. And the way I do that is create programming and make sure and work with other units on campus to help make sure there's programming to support faculty in all of those three core areas that you're responsible for, right? And so I say I'm there because I fell in every pothole you could have fallen into. And so I'll tell you just a little bit about that story. And how much time do I have, Kelly? Because I don't want to go over. 5 more minutes?
Yeah, I think that's good because
Okay,
we do want to get into our topic, but we
Yeah,
want to hear
yeah.
your story. So
Yeah, so, I dropped out. Our current measurements in the state of California would consider me a failure because I didn't come back after 6, it was after 6 years that I came back, and I did 2 years, and then I came back and did another 4 years actually. But I did, several degrees, and then I went on to graduate school, but I did the great sin, working class kid that I am, of going to, and one who did it mothering. I did all my degrees in one place. Sin number one. And then I went on to work at the same place that I graduated from. Sin number two. Which meant that I was in what looked like a powerful position to many students and colleagues, even who weren't in the know about the hierarchies of academia. I was the associate director of women's studies at the University of Arizona. And I ran the graduate program. I ran the undergraduate program. I actually hired lecturers and let them go, and mentored them. This all being not tenure track myself and on a year-to-year assignment in a system that has no protections. The CSU has far more protections for anybody under those sorts of circumstances. And I did that for 8.5 years. I loved the job in many, many ways, but I foolishly, not knowing the unwritten curriculum of being a faculty member, not knowing a great many things as a first-gen kid, hard work, they'll like me, I'll do good things. I did good things. I was working effectively 3 jobs, and no, it didn't matter because I didn't fit the stereotypes they wanted, basically. So when it became clear to me that there was no way I was ever going to get a tenure track position there, I started looking elsewhere, and Cal State Channel Islands opened up, and it was kind of a perfect fit because I'd already been doing university building work. I had already been doing senior faculty work without the privileges. So I had to pretend, like deans thought I was fully tenured because, number one, I had graduated at an older age. I had deans going, what? Like, how are you doing all this? But I was always the kind to jump in and do whatever work needed to be done, and I'd figure it out. And I did. I'm a systems thinker. I could give you a whole history on my background as an activist and how that worked, how that saved me in many ways. But so I took a job here as a tenure track faculty member in my late 40s. And I was finally an assistant professor. So, I had already been an administrator and acted as a senior faculty member before I got my first position. I also had the weird thing of coming in. I was perfect because we needed people who could build programs. So they got me on the cheap, so to speak. But I was the an assistant professor here, building a brand new university, which still is an amazing opportunity. That's got its frustrations, but had its challenges. But I was used to being pretty creative in my approach to my career, because I'd had to kind of make it up as I went along. That said, I am now in charge of helping people like you will be soon make their way. So for example, we're a small campus, but we hired on 20 new faculty members last fall, and I got to run the early start program for them to help them acclimate to our campus. So many of all the questions you're asking today are ones that I help our faculty do. And the fabulous thing about my campus is that for the first 15 years, we did an all-campus hiring process. So I was part of helping to hire probably 75% of the faculty here. So I've done a lot of hiring, a lot of mentoring over the years. In fact, I just came from a meeting that was our nursing faculty, and one who just got promoted to full professor was asked me in because I nurtured her from the start. And she invited me in because she's now paying that forward, and she's nurturing the new ones we just hired on in nursing. So, and they were lucky to get 3 new faculty members there. So this is what I do for a living now, for the most part. Yes, I still do research and teach, but I'm mostly supporting faculty. And I'll end it there. There's a million things I could. It's great. It's with great gratitude that I get the pleasure of doing this amazing job.
Wow, that's fantastic. I think we'll touch on that and come back to it. But there is a question in the chat about elaborating. And Dalton, if I'm getting this wrong, please speak up. Why you might consider that a sin? I'm thinking it is the PhD, the undergrad, everything in the same place. Was that the question?
Yes. Oh, well, and then working in the same place. It's considered incestuous. You are intellectually incestuous when you do that. And yes, I was raised Catholic, so sin is, the preferred term.
Yeah, and I have heard that as well, though. As much as I've heard that, I've also we've had, people have done it. So if you've done your undergrad, your master's, and your PhD at the same place, it doesn't discount you from anything.
I'm here
at all. Yeah, so don't stress about it too much.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, it is one of those things that if you're trying to get into this, especially if you're trying to work at the same university you got your degrees at, that's where it becomes even more difficult. But they do think of it as at the Research One institutions, and there's one big difference, and that's a difference I can talk about a little bit more. I mean, it is not uncommon at a Research One institution for them to hire in 3 people with the full intention of only keeping 1. That is the opposite of the CSU, because just as in the Research One universities, it is not uncommon to have weed out classes where there's 1,000 students and whoever survives gets to continue in the major. That process is, purposeful and has damage and creates damage in all kinds of different ways. That is not the philosophy or the practice of the CSU. The CSU is about student success, and it's about, we don't hire people to let them go. It's way too expensive, for one. It's very time consuming, and we hire people with the intention of them staying with us forever, for the rest of their careers.
I don't know, you have the same, but we say we're hiring a 30-year colleague.
Right. I think of it as a sort of marriage. I mean, you're betrothed at that point.
And James brings up a great point to say that, to some degree, saying you can't keep staying in the same place is really limiting people, and it's limiting our ability to diversify our professoriate, to diversify our faculty, when we are automatically say, you better have had the freedom, and I mean that in multiple ways, to have popped around the country.
Exactly. No, it assumes a great deal.
It assumes a great deal. So hopefully we are changing that. I know we're changing a lot of hiring practices across the CSU and are becoming much more forward thinking and much more proactive in this.
Yes.
But I do want to focus on what we do. Okay, so we're hired.
You're hired.
We have the job. It's fantastic. The celebration is happening. The letters on the fridge. Maybe that was just me. I don't know. Like the hiring letters stay there for a while. But can we start with just some basics, because I want to demystify this process. I want to remove that, like you mentioned, the hidden curriculum, the hidden academia. What is this? So when do you start? When do you get hired? Like when does this whole thing start?
Well, that's becoming a little more variable in the CSU. And let me give you an example. For most of our history at Channel Islands, we have you came on in August, 2 days before your classes started, 2 or 3 days before your classes started, you hit the ground running, and you have meetings those days. I mean, we had, university meetings, division meetings, department meetings, everything. So very intensive time. and then partying too, generally speaking, people get together and, there's the socializing piece of it. And then, you dig in. So yeah, you're expected to come ready to teach. And that can be hard. So last year here as faculty development director, and I'm not the only one, like East Bay, I think San Jose, I know, has a great early start program. Several of the CSUs have what we call an early start program for faculty. I was able to negotiate for 4 days, which, wasn't what I proposed, but that's what I got. And it went so well that this year we're doing basically a week and a half, 2 weeks. And where it's like, so I crammed a bunch into those days. So it was really intense. But that cohort is so bonded, and they felt, I think, so, good about coming on that they're a force on campus at this point. And that's what I wanted. I wanted them to feel like they belong to each other, if nothing else, right? And that they were connected to the university. So this year, we're in the process of developing an extended program that's a little less intense, like half days where we meet people and have lunch together, and they, learn what the resources on campus are and all of that kind of stuff. But then half of a day where they get to work on their syllabi and where they're actually paid for it. Here's a couple kinks in the CSU system, just so you might want to save your pennies. If you're hired into one where you're just expected to get up and running yourself, you start late August. You don't get your first check or your first your health insurance until October 1. Part of our argument for moving it back as far as we did was to get them by September 1. So our new faculty coming in this year for the first time will get a paycheck and health insurance as of September 1. And yeah, you see what Kelly's doing. Hallelujah. Yeah. Yeah, those of us who were shocked by that and came in not knowing that was the case, it was like credit cards and yeah, I'll make it work, but holy moly, I wasn't expecting that. Nobody tells you. So you ask questions. Do they have an early start program for faculty like Channel Islands has? But let's hope they keep it. Let me just say, administrations come, administrations go, and they change their minds. And, budget cuts come, budget cuts go, and you never know what administrator is going to decide to fund or not. You will find that fun. Know that your faculty colleagues are the ones that help you make it through. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers your questions, Kelly, or you got follow-up questions.
No, I mean, I think this, and also I think this is a great first tip too, though. Ask questions about when you're actually starting. Ask questions about that first paycheck, because that's spot on. October 1, I work with the new faculty too, and I always say, you got to get COBRA. There's all of this stuff, because you do not have insurance, and we have wonderful insurance coverage. We really do. We have lovely benefits, but they don't kick in until after you've been here a month. So there's an issue with that. But even with the early start and all you've been negotiating and working towards, we're still talking end of August, and I know that coming in, there's all of this stuff. You have to figure out so much. And then, like you said, you hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. So should you start preparing ahead
absolutely
ahead of time? Do you know your classes ahead of time? Do you start your syllabi? What can you do? Or what?
Well, you should be proactive about knowing what, if you don't already, when you get your letter, you'll get a letter, right? And if the letter's well thought out, it will include things like and these may be separated out into separate letters, like, so, you may get, yes, we want you, and then separate things like a contract or whatever to sign. Different campuses are different beasts, just so you know. We all have our histories, we all have our structures, we all have our quirks, we all have our dynamics. Everyone is different in certain ways, and they're all the same in certain ways, right? Especially across the CSU, because there's that overarching structure, right? So you want to make sure that, do you get moving costs and how much? And, you know, it doesn't hurt to ask. You don't want to, you know, be denied the job because, you know, you asked for too much or something like that, but that's very unusual, extremely unusual. You should be, I mean, as long as you're asking nicely, you should ask, you're expected to ask. The silly thing is that we don't just automatically give what's reasonable. Like some faculty will come in knowing they need to ask and will, you know, angle for this or that well, and some people don't. You know, you could talk to your own faculty affairs person at the place you're at, right? And see, or dean, talk to a dean, like what's a good negotiation technique with this? You know, what's worked for you in terms of like what turns your head when and makes you say yes to a negotiation? Because the deans at the place where you're at right now look good if you look good, right? So they're going to want to help you if they're decent deans at all. They're going to want to help you be successful. Even your department chair can probably give you feedback about this. Anybody who's been in on these negotiations, you want to sort of get a feel for how they go and such, right? So you want to negotiate for everything. Your research, like how much research of yours are they going to support? What kind of travel funds are they going to give you? How long are those good for? How long do you get to spend that? Like, ask those questions. Don't, like, I know the tendency, certainly it was mine, but I'd seen enough to go, okay, I'm pushing, and I got a fairly good, decent deal for the things that I wanted. But like, you get the job and you're like, oh, I got the job, I got the job, I got the job. And then you forget to ask all the things that'll make that job doable for you, right? You need to be able to do research. And the challenge of the CSU, pluses and minuses, like, yes, you get, you know, your summer is theoretically free unless you're teaching over the summer, but we do not get paid to do research. We're required to do research. We don't get to keep our jobs if we don't do research, but we do not get paid to do research. That's on the weekends and in between times and whenever, right? You have 15 units of what are called weighted teaching units, and 12 of those are used generally teaching. It differs. Some places have it broken out differently, and 3 are for service. Some of the CSUs have managed to negotiate or navigate their budgets such that they give faculty research time. I think SDSU is one. I forget what the others are. That's the one that sticks out in my head, but we have not. And it does make it harder. Not impossible, obviously. I have publications and such out there, but it's a slower process. Kelly, you want to?
No, I was just going to say, I know that, yeah, it really is campus specific, which is another reason when you're applying, know that campus. We are not a blanket system. We definitely are, we have unique things, and even within the departments. So, for example, in our call at Long Beach, the College of Natural Science and Math, you can't, if you're mentoring students, which is required by our tenure document, you have to have a publication with students. That's just for us. But then we also can get, if you're doing a certain amount, you can get some release from teaching. That's not true of all of our colleges here. It's not true of all the departments. So it's just, these are just great questions to ask, in addition to, and I wrote this down, I love this, knowing about, are there funds for travel, in addition to funds for research? And the key thing here, which I think doesn't often get asked, is how long do you get to spend that money?
Yes.
Because it goes away, and there, it can seem like a lot. And then if they say you have 2 years to spend it, and then at the end, you're just,
that as long as you can.
yeah, extend that as long as you can. I thought that was just a great point.
Yeah, yeah. And labs, if you need labs, if you need equipment, if you need anything you need to make your job as a faculty member easier. Do you need a research assistant? Do you need, like, whatever you think you need? Think well about it. Sit down with your advisor and say, like, how do you imagine your next 6 years? Because that's what's going to be your tenure process, right? Think about what's going to help make me successful. I want, a buyout from a class so that I can write a big grant. I want now, like our campus for your first 2 years, you are already bought out, and that this is a support for research, your first 2 years to get you jump started. So you only teach 3 classes, one class time would be for your research and one class time, the last would be your service. So, someone has a question in the chat about publications. Should we worry about publications? First off, I'm going to encourage you not to worry. I know that's like silly, but I would encourage you not to get caught up in worry, because focus and a plan are what make the difference. If you have a plan, and this is where sitting down and saying, okay, here's how much time I'm going to spend on this. Here's how much each day, even how much time I'm going to spend on this other thing. And, you really want to schedule your time out. And if it's not working, reschedule your time out so that you can make sure you get time in for your publications. And I will say, I am not the best at this, but because I have the tendency to work very much like I need a big chunk of time to sit down, but I have at times successfully, especially for smaller public, like an article, the 15 minutes a day makes a difference. If you keep your mind on your research, like if you just take that 15 minutes to think about that article you're working on, then you're in the back of your mind, you're still working on it. And then the next day, but if you let it go too long, I mean, for years, because of the book, I just could not think about it except in the summertime. So I just, like, summer was cranking out the writing. But that meant every year I had to acquaint myself with my own research, because it had been that long. So I don't suggest that as the best thing. It's how I worked it out, but I also had articles in there that I was working on it over the years. So yeah. Arlen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hello everybody. Arlene Moreno from 4th year doctoral candidate at UC Berkeley. And right now, this is hopefully one more year I get to graduate next year. But one of the questions I had, because this summer I want to focus on like data analysis for my dissertation and then also start my job application materials. So how would you ideally kind of plan out for the summer, getting ready for your last year and thinking about like going to postdoc market, but then also faculty market?
Yeah, it's a juggle. There's no question. Again, set a timeline for yourself. Say, I want this done by this time. Set dates, and know that some of them are going to get pushed back. But so set aggressive dates is what I do for myself. Part of this is about knowing yourself, right? For some people, just having X amount, okay, mornings, I'm going to do the data analysis. I'm going to take a lunch break and go for a walk. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to work on researching job openings or developing my materials for a postdoc or whatever, right? Write it down. Better yet, have a group that you work with that you're accountable to. Like you meet once a week and you say, I'm going to do this week, and this is what I hope to accomplish. And then you have to face them again the next week or the next day or whatever works for you. But find a group of folks. That's one of the things I set up here for our faculty on campus. It's an easy thing. Faculty choose to host. They get a little bit of a stipend. And we have faculty writing connections. We have one every day of the week. So people can tap in, and some people are doing it over the summer. So yeah, that's a great question. I hope I answered.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. And I see one in the chat here, 15 to 30 minutes a day for writing, 5 days a week at a minimum. Yeah, that is, Kelly, thank you. Jesse.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insights this far. Jesse Enriquez, I'm a PhD candidate at UC San Diego. Also about to be in the job market this upcoming year, which will be my last year. I had a question. I've been lecturing adjunct faculty for the CSU for multiple years now. I have extensive experience actually working at a teaching and learning center at UC San Diego. I'm a graduate teaching consultant. My question is like, how much should I um, really showcase that during the process, during the job application process, specifically to the CSU, because I want to be at a teaching institution. I'm a proud product of the CSU and want to come back and teach there. And so my question is, I know that some CSUs, are somewhat focusing a little bit more on research, or really want to see some pubs and want to see you highlight your research as a scholar. But I also, know that at the end of the day, at the core, the CSU is a teaching institution. And so how much should I, really put myself out there in terms of like my teaching pedagogical training and experience and that type of thing during the process?
I would say be prepared to highlight both. And I would highlight, here's a, so neoliberal universities have created a caste system of faculty. And unfortunately, some faculty and some campuses think less of lecturer faculty and treat them that way. Other campuses or departments are much more egalitarian and recognizing that this is an unjust system and that it's designed to undermine the whole culture of faculty. So one of the things to feel out when if you go to interview somewhere is those attitudes to some degree, though I would say that to a lesser extent. The more important thing is to ask flat out when you get invited to interview, whether it's a Zoom interview or a on-campus interview, ask how much emphasis you should give to what, and ask for clarity. If anything doesn't seem clear, ask questions. Do not be ashamed to ask questions. Say, I want to put my best foot forward and I want to know, like, are you looking more for the teaching? Like I was just in on we're interviewing a late round interviewing right now. I went to a teaching presentation at which we as the discipline search committee asked them to both, it's a combined research and teaching opportunity. How do you show your pedagogical chops while at the same time highlighting the power of your research? So be prepared for that mixed. Certainly on our campus, we emphasize the teaching. I think most CSUs do, but the kicker is that your research matters a lot in terms of how your colleagues will see you as valuable to the department, because you're going to be helping to build curriculum and updating it with, new findings and all of that kind of stuff, and adding whatever flavor you add to that department. So what flavor do you have to add to that department that they don't have? That's kind of the big question, both in teaching and in service or in research.
And
Kelly.
just to add that, I mean, we consider ourselves teacher scholars or scholar teachers. I hear both.
Yes.
And I feel that I can tell you that all of the job apps that I've read, if you are not doing both really well, you're not going to, because we're getting over 100 applications per position. And I was just talking to somebody, and I'm in biology. I was talking to somebody in poli-sci, not on our campus, at another CSU. There were over 300. So highlighting both, and that's going to depend on the campus. It's going to depend on the department, all of that. But I would not hide anything, right? I would not say, oh, I'm just going to not really emphasize my research, or I'm not going to really emphasize my teaching. At a CSU, we want both. And I would add, we really want your commitment to mentoring, to wanting to be at a CSU and, coming from a CSU, interacting with the CSU for CDIP, highlight that you want to work with our students. I see so many applications and they look great, but if they don't show a passion for the CSU, no. I mean, I don't know what your take on that is, Jules, but we're really looking for people who want to be here and want to work with our students.
Like the more you can tie, in fact, the more you can tie your research processes to student learning. And especially, and some departments on our campus explicitly, some less explicitly require faculty like you, Kelly, to publish with students in certain fields, because in certain fields that's more doable than in other fields, right? So yeah, I'm seeing another question in
we have two more questions in the chat.
I found it incredibly challenging to find appropriate support and accommodations, even with access to student parent center. Any insight on what I could ideally expect as a potential new faculty with young children? Oh boy, been there, done that. So that is going to vary a lot across the system. We are working on developing that. I, as faculty development director, have been holding a mix of things like faculty lunches where faculty who have family care obligations of all sorts, children, parents, whatever, right, can come and talk to each other and share what's challenging and possibly find both mentorship and support with each other, because we have one of the strongest things to do is to find faculty who also have parents of children around the same ages. So I've developed picnic times where people can bring their kids and get to know each other, and the kids can get to know each other, because then you can go, oh, my kid likes playing with this person's kids, maybe, we can trade off. So you can do research this day, I can do research that day, or whatever. We can tag team each other to help. And the kids are happy because they're playing with a friend, right? So those are the kinds of connections we're trying to make here, and used to be made more integrally with earlier iterations of our institution, where the president used to, when we were smaller, have holiday and end of the year gatherings at his house, which had a huge yard, and the kids would all be out playing, and this is where that would all happen. Well, so now I'm, as faculty development director, trying to create that option or that possibility for faculty to get to know each other and their children to get to know each other, because that is a big source of support. But I mean, that's another thing to ask. If you get offered a job, I wouldn't, you can ask at an interview, but you want to sort of save some of the more detailed stuff for if you get the job. What kind of services they do have there, what kind of supports they have. Yeah, it is. It's hard. And these days, with COVID, I mean, I have some colleagues here who still, because of health challenges that are exacerbated by COVID, are still mostly online. So it's a real challenge. Yeah. As a fellow activist, did you have to hide some of your activism work to get a foot in the door? I didn't hide anything. I highlighted what I knew would be important, and I'll speak actually with much greater experience of having served on search committees. Insofar as it makes a difference to what field, to your research in the field you're in, you should highlight it. It is a community service, and when you present it as community service, that is a requirement for many of the program personnel standards which are the documents by which you go, you are judged in your going up for tenure. So you may call them something different, Kelly, at Long Beach, but we have what we call program personnel standards that are what everybody when you go up for tenure or when you submit your portfolios every year, that's the document you have to match your work to. So service, this counts, teaching, this counts, research, this counts. We talk about them as buckets. And some of it seems very, very overlapping, and you have to choose sometimes which bucket something should go in, right? So yeah, I run workshops for faculty on RTP work, workshops so that they can help figure out in my program personnel standards, does this count here or does this count here, right? That kind of thing. I don't know if that adequately.
Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I was just gonna say to tag on to that, and I've offered this in the chat as well, but the RTP, the retention, tenure, and promotion, that's the standard you're going to be judged against for the reappointment for tenure. They are online. So you could actually get a good flavor about the department that you're interested in ahead of time and see. And oftentimes it's spelled out, and like community service is absolutely something that we look at. Service to your profession, service to the community. So I think, and you could get a sense of how important it is in those documents. Same thing with the publication comment before.
And Kelly, I like your tip about request to have all your teaching limited to certain days or whatever. So that's a big help. We do have good benefits. I mean, and so faculty at the CSUs have been far more protected, I think, in many ways than at a lot of universities across the country. So it's good to know. I think Nancy had your hand up, and then there's another James in the chat. We'll get back
to James' question. One of the things they were talking about. So when I was talking about activism, I was a union contract like lead negotiator. And on top of that, I have a lot of activism work on campus and multiple media pieces criticizing the university that I'm at right now. So I'm very like involved, and pieces are out there. And so like same, it goes along with James's question in terms of union involvement, whether that, how that is viewed.
If you're talking to administrators, deans and such, I would not highlight that at all. It's not something I would amplify in my materials necessarily. But certainly when you're talking, feel out the faculty colleagues. There are some campuses that are far more, like something like 98% of our faculty are union members. So that's just the reality here. But you kind of want to get a feel for where that campus sits and how contentious it is. We've had very good relationships overall with administration and CFA. But I know there's administrators on our campus who are like, that would not be what they'd want to hear. But they wouldn't actually, on our campus, it kind of wouldn't make a difference because they'd assume that you'd probably sign up anyway because of the numbers we have here. So it might not matter as much here as it would in one of the other CSUs, but I'd certainly feel that out. I wouldn't necessarily take it out of my CV or something, but I certainly wouldn't amplify it in my materials, because I think that is one of those things that can, when push comes to shove, it's very hard hiring. I have to tell you, like the discipline search committee I'm on right now, which is not my discipline. I'm actually an equity advocate serving on that committee as an equity advocate from outside the department. And, it's so hard. Candidates come in, and you'll see this. The candidates come in and it's like, this one would be great in this way, but doesn't really have this that we wanted. And this one would be great in this other way, but they're weak in this way. And will they develop well enough in that? How do we know? It's like, there's so many things. And because we are bringing somebody on with the idea that you'll be with us for 30 years or more, that's a big commitment, and the other piece is that, the committee might go to the administrator and say, we want this person, like they might actually rank people and say, this is our first choice, this is our second choice, this is our third choice. But the administrators then have their job to do in terms of due diligence and finding out if there's any like dirt on this person, or if there's any like that you've violated, like that you're a sex offender or something like that. That you know, that there's that the publications are for real, that the, you know, whatever you've said is true. But they also have their say, and in the end, the administrators get to choose. I mean, faculty get to recommend, administrators make the choices. So yeah, I don't know if that adequately answers your question, Nancy.
Well, and can I also add that what is the root of, what is your passion? Where is that lying? Highlight that, right? Because are you there for equity? What are you pushing for here?
Yes.
That, don't hide that. That would be my advice, right?
Yes, thank you for
Channel it.
saying that, Kelly. You're absolutely right. I think all of campuses, and again, it varies. You want to feel out the culture of the campus, but all of us are pushing for greater equity. The system is pushing for greater equity. So if you can speak to that, absolutely do so. I think that would be seen as a strength. I'm at an R1, Dalton, where, as you know, research is the greater focus. So I've put myself out there to gain teaching experience. I've managed to lecture both at UAB and asynchronously at one of the CSUs. Is there a significant weight difference between lecturing and teaching a course? I'm not sure I'm understanding the difference between lecturing, like just going in and giving a lecture. Is that what you're suggesting, Dalton? I can't quite hear you. I think that was a yes. I'll take that as a yes. Definitely, if you're in charge of your own class, that's a much bigger thing. Not that you should not mention the lecturing, but the having taught a class on your own, like that has a far more weight, because you've had to manage that whole enchilada, and that's, you know, it's a bit of work, and it's a serious bit of work that, if you haven't had the experience of doing, is a, you know, high learning curve experience, right? If you've taught a class, you know that. Yeah.
And I would highlight that, and I would seek out, if you don't have a lot of opportunity where you are, try, you know, I had to do this. I sat out, I taught a class on Saturdays. It was all day because it was just Saturdays, lecture and lab, at a community college, at a local community college. And even just doing that, plus the TAing from before, you know, that shows that you could, like you said, you can manage the whole thing. And I think that's important.
Right. Okay, in your opinion, is the benefits at all in highlighting my time in elected in office with local city council while being a grad student? Wow. Yes, I've heard mixed responses about highlighting or including it when applying for faculty positions. Well, here's what, let me just be blunt about where people's minds might go when they hear such a thing. Oh, is this person going to be so politically involved that they're not really invested in the university? That would be where you would want to be clear about where your investments are. Do you plan to run for office before you become a full professor, say? Do you, you know, how do you see your responsibilities to the university as opposed to the larger community? Now, that is community service, certainly of the highest order, or one of the highest orders. But you have to frame that with an understanding that the university is expecting to get X amount of work out of you. And they're going to be a little dicey about someone who's maybe not going to give as much, right? And you know, and the truth is, those of us who have a tendency to carry the load of of running the university in all the ways that faculty are responsible for, those faculty who don't carry their weight, especially senior faculty who don't carry their weight, that's a burden. So you want to think yourself about honest honestly. Like, are you going to burden your other colleagues with work that you should be filling in on when you go off and do fancy other stuff, right? That isn't really about university work. It might actually benefit the university. And if you can show that, I mean, that there's both are possible. And if you're in political science, that might be appropriate. It might be appropriate to your research even. So there's a lot of ways that could work, I can imagine. But one of the things that people are going to be like, have their ear to the ground for in interviewing is like, how dedicated is this person going to be down the road?
I wouldn't hide it though, because people Google.
Yeah.
Don't leave it off, because people, well, wait, is this the same person who was elected? You know, put it in, but say what you want to do with that. You know, was that an experience that really informed your desire to now teach and share and learn and be in academia? Or, you know, I just think I would weave it into why you want this job rather than hiding it. So, but I do want to get into, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, Kelly.
No, I was going to switch topics because we have just 3 minutes and I wanted to get into pitfalls of the first year, but let's finish answering this. Let's
do a quickie. Yeah. I would think ethically about the institution too. You know, when you are making a commitment to an institution, I would argue, and that there's a dependence on faculty that is deep, and colleagues feel it when other colleagues don't step up. Yeah.
That's true. And sorry, Jesse, I didn't see your hand before.
Yeah, just a quick one to add to that comments about, you know, doing additional things. I do a lot of research consultancy work with organizations and wanted to see if that's something that I should highlight. I don't necessarily publish a lot of that work because it's, you know, independent clients, and sometimes they don't want that stuff out into the world. But you know, I did want to ask, you know, how much of that I should talk about. You know, a similar question about, you know, I don't want my colleagues thinking I'm going to continue to really fully flesh out that consultancy work and not, you know, be dedicated to the institution. But I do want to say, hey, you know, I've been doing this for a while and I'm really good at this research thing, and I can, that's something that I can hope to
wind
build
up
out.
doing it for the university. I mean, you wind up with buyout doing this kind of work for the university. So we do that on a regular basis. So no, don't hide that at all. I would, you know, I would be thinking about how might this apply in the university setting from this position that you're applying for. How might it be seen as community service? How might it be translated into work for the university with buyout time? What, you know, be thinking, how does it apply to teaching? Does it open up opportunities for your students to do student research? You know, which is what a lot of faculty do. You know, we just had our celebration of service day yesterday. It was a huge day of panel discussions and poster sessions and all community-based research and all of that. So yeah, no, one of the highest impact teaching practices there is getting students in active community-based research. It is powerful for the students. It is powerful for the community. It makes a huge difference, and it gives them hands-on real experience that they can put in their CVs or their resumes or whatever. So, you know, it's a win-win-win all the way around. And so, yeah, no, I would definitely frame it in that way.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we have 20 seconds, but we have the last minute. Anything to avoid that you can suggest, like that first year, or any last tip, either way, pro or con, on what to do?
Believe in yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to guess everybody here suffers from what I suffer from, and that is imposter syndrome, right? In some way or another. And worse yet, if you got gendered training that says don't toot your own horn, or maybe, you know, social training culturally that it's bad to toot your own horn. It's hell for me to do this. The word, I hate it. I could tell you stories about hating it. But don't let that get in your way. Ask for help. And I say help. It is not a shameful thing to ask your colleagues to support you. I'm going to tell you a really funny story just to close out. I'm going to try and keep this short. When I was looking for a partner and friends were pushing me to go online, I resisted so badly that one night when I was sitting there with what looked like a stupid question that I couldn't possibly answer about myself, my best friend called, and I didn't even say hi. I'd say, how would you answer this effing question? And she went, blah, 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 blah. And I went, oh, and the light bulb went on. So I did not write my own profile. I had friends. And I said, my friend who's known me since high school wrote this about me. My friend I work with currently and work on projects with wrote this about me. I didn't write a thing. I just said who wrote it. I said, I hate writing these things. So it's the same thing. Just use your colleagues, use your friends, find people you trust who you know will tell you the truth, who will give you a good sense of yourself. Because that undermines us more than anything, is that all the stories we have about, oh, I'm not supposed to, I should hide myself. Don't look at me, right? That it's painful. It's painful. But then I realized somebody else could say it, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll let them say it. Do the same. That's my advice.
That is awesome.
Use your
advice.
12-year-old.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. I put a link to your book. So if anybody wants to check it out also, because I think that's incredible. And what a process that is to do.
That was a 20-year process.
Oh my gosh.
That was a 20-year labor of love. Yeah.
So this is your baby. Stephanie is asking, does anybody want to get together to talk about prepping job apps? I love it. Please. Stephanie, maybe you could put your contact information there and we can have people connect. But thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're awesome.
I love nothing better than doing this work. This is my favorite thing to do, because having fallen in the potholes, I love keeping other people from falling in. I did come out relatively unscathed, and yeah, so this is my heart work. So
absolutely.
Thank you all. Best wishes to all of you. May you all rock, your PhDs and the job market. And I look forward to maybe interviewing some of you here. You never know.
Awesome.
Take care.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Take care. It's been such a pleasure, such a wonderful year. Thank you all.
Yes. Thank you.